As you organize your presentation or discussion that you're going to lead, make sure you have an effective opening. A good opening will help the rest of your presentation go much more smoothly. It's that opportunity where you can win the audience over to your side, whether it's cracking a joke that is appropriate to your presentation, or you're polling the group, or you're just identifying with them with your background and things like that. If you had experience in the same fields that they're in, for example, it's also good to share. All those types of things can help you build that effective opening. Stories can do that as well. Provide a preview of information prior to an explanation. So really, just like an overview, and then say, we'll now unpack this a little bit more, and we'll go in a little bit more depth here. Third, you can cover a few points of information thoroughly rather than a bunch of points incompletely. So set the limits on how much you plan to cover and stick to it as much as you can, because if you go off on rabbit trails too much, it's going to hurt you there. And that's point number 5. Just avoid tangents and getting off track. You want to organize the information with a step-by-step logical sequence for your participants. It helps them to more easily follow where you're going instead of kind of in a maze and they're trying to figure it out. And it's all like a mystified process for them, for the audience to try and have to figure it out. So if you can have your things in a logical sequence, your points, it makes it much more beneficial for your audience to pay attention. Talked about having tangents and rabbit trails, signaling transitions between information. So use the information, say, okay, we've looked at this, and then make that as a transition, a segue into now maybe you want to understand a restatement of the first point. So we looked at 5 of these different ways to organize a presentation, starting with making your opening effective, to the point now where we're signaling transitions here at point 6 between the information. You see how that works? So now you're transitioning into point 7 as we look at the next one. The next point here as we transition. So be as specific as possible in your discussion and in your presentation on your points. So the clearer the message is for your participants to understand. Try to avoid long sentences in your bulleted points or your main point. For example, try to make it as specific as you can. That just increases the likelihood your audience will understand what you're trying to convey. Provide brief pauses at appropriate times during presentations. This gives your audience an opportunity to interact if they need to, or take time to just process information. If you say consider, and then you consider this thought, and then you go right on to your next point after that, you don't pause for a couple of seconds to allow them to consider something. You see, you kind of lost the point there. So use of pause is a skill that will come with experience. And so I just encourage you in that area to continue to practice and develop that skill. And then review. Allow participants to recap the information frequently. So it helps save information for later, kind of like reviewing your points as you're going through. We looked at this in the first point, when we looked at this at the second, and now we're moving on to the third point, and then into the fourth, and the final point here is we wrap things up. Just some ideas here to help you as you organize your presentation.